Welcome everyone to our regular council meeting, Sueur City Council, August 8th, 2022. At this time, we will call the meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You were all presented with your packets earlier or late last week. Had the weekend to review those. I know it's a busy weekend with Giant Celebration. This time we'll entertain any motions to approve tonight's agenda. Thank you, Councilmember Swanberg.
Second.
Councilmember Williams, thank you. Any discussions, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to presentations. We're going to have a presentation tonight from the Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership. Tonight we have Mr. Joel Hollerick going to make a few comments to us, and if we have any questions when he's finished, we will be delighted to entertain those. So this time, Joel.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for having me. So I am just here tonight to discuss the Small Cities Development Program grant that the city obtained for some pretty significant rehabilitation work at the Hillside Court Apartments. So the federal objective of that grant program was to do some rehabilitation work on for low to moderate income housing or publicly subsidized housing. And so there were 40 units there that we wanted to do some work on. The city saw a need for repairs and renovations there. And then the secondary impact is just overall to improve the housing stock or maintain the housing stock in a given city or township throughout Minnesota. And so you can see, before we got going, there's a picture here of what that apartment complex used to look like on the outside there. There were these cantilevered walkways to get to the apartments, and they had degraded to a point where there was some temporary structure put up in order to help maintain the structural integrity of those walkways. At one point that was costing $4,800 a month just to rent or maintain that additional structure that was put in place in order to keep it supported and keep it safe. The total that went into it was $1.6 million. And so 600,000 of that came from the Small Cities Development Program through DEED, the Department of Employment and Economic Development. And then there was a publicly owned housing project fund that provided some money for that as well, $769,000. And then the complex put in from their own capital fund $198,000. So that gets us to our total of $1.6 million that got reinvested into the maintenance and upkeep of the apartment complex. So again, maintaining 40 units and access to those so that it was safe and secure for the doors and some energy efficiency as well. So rehabilitating those walkways and then the doors and the windows of the main entrance doors at the end of the walkways to get into the stairwells. So there were air conditioners that were in place there. They were no longer properly fitting in the space in the wall that they were installed in. There were a lot of gaps around there. So a lot of energy inefficiency where, air was just passing right through there and into the units. Those walkways, again, were removed completely and then replaced with a new independently supported system. And then on those doors, like I said, at the end of the walkways to get into the stairwells, they were not structurally sound anymore either because of the way that the rest of the structure was sort of pressing down on them. And those precast lintels and doors were removed and then replaced. And some of the tenants were temporarily relocated into a hotel and then brought back as they finished up the work. All total, there were 8 separate contractors that were employed for this work, and they came from all over southern Minnesota. We did keep most of the work through one main contractor here in Sueur, and then the subcontractors came from other areas around around the Sueur. So some before and after pictures here. Again, that one on the left there, the before, you can see the deterioration of the walkway. You can see exposed concrete there. You can see where some of those channels that were on the outside to help funnel some of the water away were rusted completely through. And then on the right there, what that building looks like now, thanks to all that renovation work. So on the left, again, that is the before of what some of those walkway spaces looked like, clearly rusted out and not performing their function anymore. And on the right there, the properly installed and supported roofing and overhangs. And again, just reinforcing the contrast here. So that left picture where the building was literally starting to fall down because the weather had just taken its toll over time on the wood and on the concrete and the steel that was meant to be supporting the overhangs there. And there's kind of a midway through. So they did, like I said, tear off all of that exterior walkway so nobody could get to their apartments there. And then poured new footings, dug that down really good so that it's good and properly supported there. On the right-hand side, you can see the finished work where the doors and the windows and everything are all kind of refaced to with some of the brick there. And just some more before and after, just to, again, demonstrate the need that was present there in order to maintain that as a safe place for the residents to walk to access their apartments. And kind of on the left there versus the right, that door at the end of the walkway. Again, those precast lintels and things were not structurally sound anymore. And so that whole thing was taken out and replaced with the door frame and everything that you see on the right there. A new exit sign, lights were rehung, and exterior wise too, you can see on the left that before picture there and what the grounds look like versus the really nice, aesthetically pleasing landscaping that was installed there afterwards. And that's kind of the summation of it. It was took about a year project to get that completed. But if you go drive by it and look at the outside, it looks like a whole different building. So some really good work that got done there and really improved, I think, the pride that people have in coming home and seeing a nice home that they're coming home to instead of feeling like, oh, we got the leftovers. So really good work and a good service that was done for the residents of that apartment. Any questions?
Joel, I drive by there quite often myself, and it is quite a striking difference from what it was before. It's a lot more appealing to look at, a lot safer, I'm sure. And it's just nice to know that a lot of this was paid for with grant money. So thank you for all your work with this.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. Anybody else? Well, thank you, Joel.
All right.
We appreciate
Thank you very much.
Everything. Yep.
Appreciate you having me.
Moving on to the consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered routine and have been made available to the City Council at least 2 days in advance of the meeting. These items will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, at which event this item will be removed from the agenda and considered in normal sequence. So at this time, I will ask that council member or city administrator Roby go over this consent agenda with us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On this evening's consent agenda, first we have the approval of the city council minutes from the July 25th, 2022 meeting. Approval of disbursements through today, August 8th, 2022. Those disbursements include several items over $25,000, including to Abdo Financial Services for the 2021 audit support, $37,785.50. Castor John Incorporated for the CASA 36 electrical underground conversion, pay application number 1 for $79,328.32. Landmark Structures, pay application number 11 for the composite elevated water tower, $204,440. Magni Construction, Payment application number 11 for the Well 8 and Well House project for $108,509.68. MMPA care of Avant Energy for our July 2022 purchased power, $837,489.54. The Minnesota Public Facilities Authority, we had two payments to them. The first being for the Sueur portion of the wastewater treatment facility, public facilities debt service of $939,015, and a second payment for the Well number 8 and Well House debt service payment of $42,029.79. Tri-State Bobcat for a skid steer loader. If you recall, earlier this year, Council approved the surplus of and sealed bids of the selling of the old Bobcat skid loader. The payment for that loader is $48,713.21, and a payment to U.S. Bank for the 2020B debt service of $29,510. Next, the next three items are actually related to the purchases over $25,000 we saw above. Payment application number 1 to Castor John for CASA 36. Payment application number 11 for Well number 8 to Magni Construction, and payment application number 11 to Landmark Structures for the composite elevated water tower.
Thank you, City Administrator Roby. At this time, I'd like to ask any council members if you have any questions. If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Schlueter. Seconded by Councilmember Swanberg. Any other comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to the City Administrator update, Mr. Roby.
Public comment first.
Oh, public comment. Did I miss that? Okay, I don't think we have anyone here, but at this time, we will entertain any public comment. It provides the opportunity for the public to address the council on items that are not on the agenda. I don't believe we have anybody tonight. So with that said, we will move on to City Administrator update. Thank you. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thanks again to Mr. Holler for coming tonight to present on the housing partnership. A few items. We had last week our finance analyst, Jessica Schultz, start working with Mr. Graff in the finance department. She is quickly getting up to speed on lots of things, and we're thrilled to have her aboard. Recreation Facilities Master Plan. I know this has been touched on the last few council meetings. Actually just this afternoon received an updated timeline from Bolton and Mank. I have not had a chance yet to review that timeline, but once I review the timeline, I'll bring that back to council to share that at the next meeting. Personnel and Budget Committee will be meeting in the next couple of weeks. I sent out an invite late this afternoon for an August 19th meeting to begin discussing a couple of items. The Community Development Director position and the 2023 budget. As we've already kicked off at a staff level the 2023 budget. This will be the first instance of the Personnel and Budget Committee looking at budget items for 2023. Tomorrow is primary election day here at City Hall. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Given the construction that we have around City Hall here, city staff have been working very hard with the contractor on the CASA 36 project and the city's project engineers to ensure that people know where to go, that they know where to park, and that they have as much access as possible to City Hall. So I don't know if they've done it yet because I haven't stepped outside in a long time, but 2nd Street here at Ferry Street will be graveled by the end of the day today. And so City Hall and the library will be accessible via 2nd Street. They weren't planning on graveling it, but they said they could so that we could allow traffic from the north side of Ferry to cross at 2nd. We will have a police reserve officer stationed in between the library and City Hall to both help direct parking traffic as well as direct general pedestrian traffic across 2nd Street because there's no crosswalk right now into City Hall. We've communicated that via social media. We do have curbside voting available, where staff can come out and assist someone if they're not able to come in for whatever reason, but City Hall will otherwise be normally accessible via both the north and south entrance. And as Councilmember Krogman noted to me before the meeting, we have additional wheelchair accessible parking out in front of the police station available for Election Day tomorrow. We're expecting a big crowd. So with that, I would like to thank the city staff who have worked very diligently to ensure that tomorrow is a successful day, in particular, given the construction. And also, I would like to thank all of the election judges who city staff coordinate to come and spend the day with us tomorrow. Without election judges, having a local election would not be possible. I would like to thank all the city staff who were involved in the Giant Days celebration over the weekend. Overall, it seemed to be a very successful weekend. I was there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and we had a really good turnout. Weather generally cooperated, and from public works, recreation, water, and electric, and fire department and the police department, all of those departments were actively involved in ensuring that the weekend celebration was a success. So I really appreciate staff putting in extra hours to ensure that. And finally, there was an article in the Mankato Free Press that I just wanted to touch on from a local perspective regarding inflation. And it's no surprise to anyone here that inflation, much like the effect that it's having on private citizens, is also affecting the way that we do business at the city. And from a budgetary standpoint, that's certainly going to affect how we look at 2023's budget, in particular around expenses. While it's affecting certainly what we do here at City Hall from a government standpoint, purchasing supplies, things like that for the police department, fire department, one of the areas in which this is most acutely felt is in our utilities. For example, wastewater at the wastewater treatment plant, where they use ferric chloride in one of their processes to treat the wastewater. I just did some price comparisons. Last year at this time, it was $597 per ton, and this year it has almost doubled to $1,125 per ton. And that's just for the ferric chloride itself. That doesn't include the freight, which of course has increased, and the fuel surcharge, which has increased. Bulk fuel itself, of course, diesel has gone up from $2.99 last year to $5.30 plus per gallon. Regular fuel, $2.80 a gallon to whatever it is right now, depending on if you're at Moskies or Holiday, I guess. And from MMPA, we've talked about this 2 meetings ago about the cost of electricity. The purchase power has gone up materially. We're not sure exactly what the timeline is for that coming back down. I don't think anyone has that kind of crystal ball. Even things like waste management. So waste management bills us based upon a contract that we had signed back in 2021. And in that contract is a fuel surcharge. So if the price of diesel exceeds a certain dollar value per gallon, Waste Management can turn around and charge that back to us based upon the contract that we have. So in many, many different areas, this is directly affecting city operations. What that means for a right now, from a right now standpoint, is that city managers, department managers are actively watching their budgets. They are, I'd say, really proud of the way that they are scavenging through their expenses. Anything that they don't absolutely need to do right now, they won't do right now unless it's a detriment to the long-term health of the operation. But again, certainly it will be an issue that we'll have to look at very closely with the 2023 budget. And again, this is not unique to cities, but everything from supplies to shipping to wage pressure moving up. And we thought it was moving up last year in October, and here we are. So I just wanted to provide an update on that. It is affecting us. There's no, there are perhaps long-term deleterious effects to the city only insofar as they're problematic for all entities, public and private, that we are managing the problem actively right now in terms of how we spend our dollars. And that'll be a consideration for the 2023 budget, both in terms of operating expenses, but also long-term capital needs. That's all that I have tonight.
Thank you, City Administrator Roby. With that said, we will move into the regular agenda at this time. And the regular agenda will start with item 8A, paid time off. Interesting concept. Mr. Roby, do you want to explain to us what that is and how it got stemmed?
I would, thank you. So paid time off donation policy is a policy that the city currently does not have. It's a policy that both public and private entities can utilize to allow employees who do have paid time off to donate it to other employees who are PTO eligible but may have exhausted their PTO due to an extenuating circumstance. The policy that we've laid out was driven by some recent requests from staff who would like to donate time off. And the request was just in general, they'd like to donate time off. I'd like to clarify that at the city, there was a practice in the past. We had some extended illness bank, which was like a separate sick leave that was available to certain employees. So some employees who have been with the city for an extended period of time, or more senior members, still have some extended illness bank hours that are available to them. When those are paid out, if they're not utilized, they're paid out at 25%. The employee's hourly wage. PTO, of course, is paid out at 100%. And so when we crafted this policy, it was important that we not include extended illness bank, because that would create a pretty significant liability on the city's part should we choose to allow someone to donate hours that otherwise would be paid out at 25%, now being paid out at 100%. Ultimately, the goal is to, again, in extenuating circumstances, allow staff to donate some of their PTO to another member. So the policy would establish a PTO donation bank to which employees could donate. These employees would have to, of course, be eligible for earning their own PTO. They could not be on a leave of absence, and they could only donate down to a certain point. While we appreciate that employees want to donate their PTO to their fellow employees, we also want to ensure that employees maintain a certain level of PTO in their own bank should they need to utilize it. And then from that point, once there are hours that have been donated, employees who are PTO eligible, who have been employed by the city for at least a year, can request from that bank. And those requests are reviewed by Human Resources, by the requester's manager, and by the city administrator. And if approved, then they're moved from one individual's bank into the recipient's bank. The language is all in the policy. City clerk and HR director Stacy Lawrence and I reviewed a couple of different model policies, reached out to Abdo Workforce Solutions, and just asked, what do other government agencies do when they want to adopt this kind of policy? What's some model language that we want to make sure is in there? They provided that feedback, and we structured this policy. Again, this was born out of an employee's desire to donate some time, which functionally we could do right now, but we wanted to make sure that it's in policy. That's the overview. If there are any questions or comments, I'll take them.
Any questions? Any council members?
I do have questions. In our city staff, including all employees, we have some people at the bottom of the pay scale, some at the top. How does it work when you're giving PTO, are you giving it by dollar amount? Or are you giving it just, you have days off?
It's just the time only.
So it's, to me, that's a strange disparity. Okay. In other words, somebody at the lower end could be putting money in, somebody at the higher end could be taking it. It strikes me as I'm not against it. I'm just trying to figure it out. Okay.
So if I can respond to
Yeah.
that. So there are a couple different ways that we looked at this. One would be a dollar value, right? And one would be strictly an hours value, or from an hours perspective. And it gets cumbersome for the reasons that you pointed out if we were to do dollars. So we say someone is making $40 an hour and they want to donate 10 hours. Someone who's making $18 an hour takes that. The number of hours that you get out of that amount differs by person. And so by donating strictly at an hours level, it makes it a little bit more equitable. So we're not in a little bit less cumbersome. So an hour is an hour is an hour. And again, this was recommended by ABDO to avoid the issue of, well, if you donate so many dollars at your wage, 10 hours of that, maybe it's $400. Well, $400 could be worth, over 20 hours to someone else. Then all of a sudden you're creating some disparities that you really want to avoid. And so the recommendation was from ABDO to donate based upon hours and dispense based upon hours, regardless of what the dollar value of those was. But yes, you're right. You could have, it does certainly could change your liability. But given the number of full-time staff we have here who are PTO eligible and the number of hours that people will be limited by this policy, the liability would ultimately probably come out in the wash in terms of exposure.
Thank you. Next question. How much discretion does the Stacy in this case have, our human resources, to grant or deny this if somebody asks?
So the policy outlines pretty distinctly what qualifies an individual for receiving this and what does not. So there are two main categories of qualification. One would be a medical emergency for the employee or an immediate family member, and the policy calls out what an immediate family member is defined as, and also a major disaster, which I'm hoping that we don't have to ever give out for that for lots of reasons, mostly because it's unlikely, but it's also typically community wide, because it has to be a federally declared disaster, and the recipients must have been an employee for at least a year, full-time or part-time. It doesn't, we don't delineate between the two, and can only receive up to 480 hours per year. And so from that point, once those restrictions are in place, it does narrow in some ways the candidate pool. There is some discretion available in that. From a practice standpoint, it would be my recommendation that we not hold on to a bank. I anticipate most of these scenarios, most of these types of donations and requests will be pretty case specific, where individuals would like to donate to a specific individual and the request would come in shortly thereafter. And we would not leave anything in the bank. So unless the individual's already hit their cap. So in other words, I don't want to carry over a cap or a bank for any period of time. That if there's an employee who suffers a medical emergency and is in need of PTO, their colleagues know about it, their colleagues will donate, and the request would come in shortly thereafter.
Is the policy written in such a way that you donate when there's a request? I thought it was a sort of bank.
In theory, it is a bank, and so the language is pretty broad. So if you had someone who would like to donate their PTO out of the goodness of their heart, or if we had a policy that didn't allow payout of PTO, then someone could just put money in the bank, and whenever it's needed, it's there. As it stands, our personnel policy does allow individuals to build up PTO to 520 hours. There's certain guidelines for at what point you can actually receive a payout if you're going to get close to that 520 hours, or it's a portion of that depending on the type of employee and the type of agreement you have, if you're unionized or not. Some of those hours can go into health savings instead of a cash payout. So that the language is allows for someone to donate at any point for any reason, but I simply anticipate that we will see donations when there is a need, and we won't see donations when there is not.
I have two other quick questions. And
Sure.
one, what about our union contracts? How does it play into those in some way, or do we have to consult with them? What do we do?
Not that we're aware at this time. The PTO is PTO is PTO.
Okay, thank you. Finally, and again, I'm just trying to understand this and make sure we all understand. The second provision is for disasters. I believe they have to be declared by the president or some. The problem, the issue I see there is if you have a disaster, it could affect your whole staff. And that's why I'm asking the question about discretion. At a certain point, if everybody, not everybody, but everybody in a department or a majority are asking for time off because if someone else is willing to give it to them, how do we control that? Where's the discretion? Is there some to be able to say, no, we can't do that. We'll have to limit how much time off we give in order to keep the city running to provide the services during the emergency.
Yes, and that's exactly why I'm more comfortable with this, allowing a little bit more subjectivity and a little bit more discretion that's not specifically called out in city policy, because between the HR director and the city administrator, whoever those individuals are at whatever point, you want to do what's best by your employees in honoring the requests, but you also need to keep the city running. And so if there's a point where you need to say, I understand you're requesting this, but at this time, we can maybe give it all out, but we have to stagger when that PTO is taken in order to ensure that city operations continue. That's why that is at this point purposely left to the discretion of the city administrator and the HR director. And also, frankly, so that it's not just with one individual. There are purposely three individuals involved in this decision: the requesting manager or managers, if there are multiple requests, HR director, and the city administrator.
Thank you very much. I think it's important we understand how this might work. It's also important that we take care of our employees. So thank you very much.
Of course.
Thank you. Very good questions. Anybody else have anything? If not, I will entertain a motion to adopt the paid time off PTO donation policy. Thank you, Councilmember Swanberg.
Second.
Councilmember Williams. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving into comments, reports, and items of appreciation. Council members, this is your opportunity to share any community events or commissions that you're a part of. This time we'll start with Councilmember Huntington.
Just one thing, I really enjoyed the giant celebration over the weekend. It was a great turnout, and thank the city staff for helping them out. All the things we did in kind stuff for them. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Krogman.
Yes, the annual meeting is what it's called of MMPA. That's the Minnesota Municipal Power Agency. We're one of the 12 members of that agency, basically providing wholesale power to all of our member cities. The meeting was held in late July. Part of that meeting was to hand out the annual report, which I have a copy here. This annual report will be given to all of our council members, and there will be copies available for the public that can be picked up in City Hall. One other quick comment. Our city administrator mentioned, obviously with inflation, we have issues when we're purchasing power. We don't pretty much purchase power so much as we produce it, although in MMPA, some is purchased. But we have to, for example, run gas turbines at our Faribault Energy Park. And obviously, our energy costs are going up to purchase that to make the electricity. There's a silver lining here in that we manage this as cities. We each have a representative on the board of directors. I am your representative from this city. And we will be keeping rates pretty much stable through the summer peak period when rates could really go up by having funding that we have within the organization, within the agency, that we can pump into keep the rates down. We put money out of our, we'll call it reserve funds, but they're not really. There's a technical name for them, but it's a way to stabilize rates. So I think that's one advantage to us being a part of. This is not a cooperative. We're actually full members of this agency. But I could give more explanation if somebody wants it, but I think it's good to know we have some control, although we can't control ultimately what energy costs us to make energy. So our portfolio, by the way, real quickly noted, right now we're roughly, let's just say a little under 25% every month is being produced from energy that does not use fossil fuel. We have absolutely no nuclear, and my understanding is there's no intention of having it at this point. By the end of the year, we're going to be up over 40% because of a wind farm where we have contracted long-term to purchase that power. The beauty of wind and solar is no matter what energy prices go with for oil or for natural gas, it doesn't vary because the wind is the wind and solar is solar. So that's why we're heavily investing in that way. So just a heads up, some of that's covered in the annual report. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Krogman. Councilmember Schlueter.
I did attend the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities Conference in Red Wing from July 27th through the 29th. It was a very informative and interesting conference. I did report back to City Administrator Roby on areas that affected the city. If anybody else has any other questions later, I'd be glad to answer. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Swanberg.
Just thank you and congratulations to the Giant Celebration Committee. Thank you to the city staff who helped make that a successful event, the many volunteers, local businesses, and service organizations to help make this event a very successful weekend. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you. Councilmember Williams.
I just want to reiterate what Dave just said. I agree. It takes a whole community to make that event happen. It was very professionally done, very enjoyable, and it really went well. So from what I could see, there's a lot of people hustling and doing a lot of work. So again, really appreciate all that effort.
Thank you. And as far as myself, I have not much to report tonight other than I asked the community of Sueur to get out and vote tomorrow. There's a very, very important referendum that's at stake tomorrow. We ask that everybody participate and exercise their right to vote. City Administrator Roby, you had an opportunity to share your thoughts with us earlier. Do you have anything else you want to end with?
I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. With that said, I will ask to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.